It's a wonderful day in the homiehood, a wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro? Hello, good morning. It is February 14th, Valentine's Day. Today is a Tuesday, and we are about to jump into our daily dose of headlines. These are the headlines for Canada as we see them live from my homie to Taro live stream. So every morning we read the Daily Mail and we just check in, try to put a little spin on some of these stories that get released in mainstream media. One thing that I thought was kind of interesting today was that this belief that trees are able to communicate via fungal networks has become a popular theory, but scientists are saying that the evidence is scarce. So I'm not going to lie, this makes me kind of sad. I was kind of like excited when I heard stuff like this, and there's been like some science fiction stuff about it. And really, what they're saying is that the metaphor has kind of gotten ahead of the data. So although it is common for mycorrhizal networks or something, I don't know, something to do with the fungal networks, um to spread their fine filaments through the earth and connect up with tree roots. It's not necessarily proven that these networks are serving as a means of communication between trees and a way to like promote the growth of other trees or prioritize seedlings. So, I was bit disappointed to find this out, but also, it's the important thing is uh that of course we have to continue to protect the trees, protect the forest, and conserve our green space. So this doesn't really change anything, although this is not proven or unproven. It's a theory, it's a metaphor. There's just not necessarily enough science to back it up. Ribert in chat is saying there is likely traditional knowledge, and yeah, that is probably true. So a good reminder that knowledge does not always necessarily come from science, and you know what? I just want to believe that this is true because it's like such a beautiful, I think, metaphor for our lives as humans and all living life as well. So it's good to be skeptical and not always accept some of these metaphors as fact, as truth. But really, what does that change? Nothing. It's still a beautiful metaphor, even if it's not scientifically proven, and we still need to conserve forests and protect nature. So we got to keep doing that. You probably have already heard, because this affects all of us in Canada, that the premiers have agreed to accept Ottawa's healthcare funding proposal. So, we've been talking about this for over a week now. The prime minister and the federal ministers have been meeting with the premiers. Now, it took 2.5 years to even be able to sit down and have a discussion all together. Some people are calling for these meetings between the prime minister and the premiers to be something that should be more part of a annual kind of tradition. COVID really extended the time between these meetings, but there really should be more kind of like synergy between the federal and provincial level, in my opinion. So the good news is, I suppose, that the premiers have accepted this deal. And so there is going to be, I think, like $46.5 billion of additional spending on top of what already would have been included in the Canada Health Transfer, which is just the transfer of funds from the federal to the provincial governments. So it'll be a total of 196.1 billion over the next 10 years. So a lot of people, a lot of experts are saying, you know what, this is good. I guess it's better than nothing, but it's not going to be something that will fundamentally overhaul our healthcare system, which, as we know in Canada, it's not doing so well. It's kind of like on life support, to use a medical metaphor. The premiers, I mean, this is kind of what everyone expected to happen because there's money on the table. They can either take it or leave it. There's not much negotiation happening, I think, is what we're hearing. And in addition to this sum of money that will get distributed to all the provinces and territories, each of those provinces and territories will also have to finalize another agreement between themselves and the federal government. So we're going to be watching this still because there's all these bilateral agreements that need to happen, and the premiers can still push for some amendments in the final deal. So all of this money is kind of like on the table, and I mean the premiers are just being like, hey, yeah, I guess we'll take it. In order to create some fundamental change, what I would like to see personally is not only have additional federal funding, but for the premiers to also step up and say, in addition to this federal funding, we're also going to spend more, or we're going to match the amount that we're getting from the feds. So it needs to be kind of like a more holistic solution. And we need every level of government to step up if we're going to fix our broken system. Speaking of broken systems, a quarter of Canadians are unable to cover a $500 emergency, StatsCan survey finds, which is a bit scary if you consider that our healthcare systems, like here in Ontario, are moving towards privatization. So I often see this kind of stat of like a $500 emergency as something that's thrown around in the US, because a $500 emergency can come literally at any time for someone in the US because their healthcare system is more precarious than ours, or it puts people in a more precarious position. So, as a result of this survey, they've found that half of survey respondents between the ages of 15 and 34 said they were very concerned that they would be unable to keep up with housing costs, compared with just over a quarter of respondents aged 65 and over. Nearly 3/4 of Black respondents and 65% of South Asians shared the same sentiment, compared with less than 40% of non-racialized respondents. So obviously, as a young racialized person, this isn't really news to me, and I would be shocked to hear that it would be news to any of my young BIPOC friends. But it's good to make sure that this data is like out there in the ethers, So around 1 in 3 people between the ages of 35 and 54 said they wouldn't be able to come up with the extra money to deal with a $500 emergency, according to the Stats Canada survey. So this is really showing that like millennials are really, really kind of like pressed for cash right now. $500 emergency, that is crazy. 1 in 3 people between the age of 35 and 54. Half of the survey's Black respondents and nearly 4 in 10 Filipino respondents said they wouldn't be able to cope with the sudden expense. So of course that is scary. That is something we need to be addressing. And one other point here for younger folks is that student loans are something that are hurting us. Myself included, I have way too much student loan debt, and that money really that I spent hasn't really paid off in my life. So this is something that it's affecting millennials. What I would love to see is student loan debt forgiveness. If Joe Biden, who is to the right of our liberal government here in Canada, is able to do $10,000 of loan forgiveness, although I think that got stopped by Republicans. Although, I don't think conservatives would stop it here in Canada, or at least they would be very foolish to. There's no reason that cannot happen in Canada. And all of these struggles that millennials are going through, we can only imagine that they're going to be put in a similar situation for our Gen Z brothers and sisters and NB friends. All right, John Tory, as we've already covered yesterday, has announced that he's going to announce his resignation. So he's prolonging his departure to preside over a budget meeting, which I believe is on this Wednesday. This is just really weird that he would announce his resignation and say that he's essentially unfit to reign. Yes, shout out to the John Tory emotes in chat. Yes, he is trying to sandbag us. So, as long as he is mayor, there is nothing to prevent Mr. Tory from exercising his powers of the office. Among them are veto powers included in strong mayor legislation passed by the province late last year, which he could use to thwart attempts to amend his budget. Some of the mayor's allies are even publicly encouraging him not to resign and instead serve out the almost 4 years remaining in his term. So, this is like horrible for democracy. Not only does he have strong mayor powers, but if he were to use them in this budget, that is really the most important decision of the year, um, he could just resign after and not be held like accountable like literally at all. So it seems like democracy is failing here in Ontario, and John Tory is potentially going to do like one last evil villain move before he resigns for good. So this article is speculating because the budget needs to be passed within a month of when it is proposed. It was proposed on February 1st, and so John Tory, people are speculating that he could stay in office as long as 25 days after the budget debate to ensure the fiscal plan's passage. So we might be stuck with him till the end of February, early March. This is saying even like what, 25 days after Wednesday. So this is like pretty ridiculous that we would be put in this situation, or sorry, Torontonians would be put in this situation. What is in the budget is new money for police, boo. Um, higher public transit fares, boo. Reduced transit service, boo. And a fiscal plan warning of a 1.4 billion pandemic-related shortfall and projects a worsening capital backlog in areas such as roads, transit, and parks. So, if you need help reading between these lines, excuse me, if you need help reading between these lines, Toronto is basically like in dire straits, and this conservative leaning council really doesn't understand what needs to be done. I think their main move, just like many Canadian municipal politicians, is like to fund the police. But we know that we're not going to just enforce our way out of these problems. So, political scientist Meyer Siamatiki, who is a professor emeritus at the University of Toronto, is saying that there is a contradiction here between saying it's inappropriate for me to remain as your mayor, but I'm going to remain for the most important decision of the year. So yeah, that's kind of just like ridiculous. There are other people who are in who are on the side of John Tory or his allies, who are saying that, hey, by the way, there's no mechanism to hold him accountable. So basically, he can do whatever he wants to do until the day he steps away, which is just like such a fail. And nothing has changed, is what Michael Thompson here is saying. Nothing has changed as it relates to the budget itself. He said, if we had not known what we learned on Friday night, we would still be going through the same process. Okay, yeah, I guess. If you were living in a parallel dimension, then you would still be going through the same process. Unfortunately, we figured out that John Tory is an absolute piece of doo-doo. Censoring myself here for YouTube, so I don't have to edit that out. But we know he's a POS, and we have to kind of like change course now. So yeah, that's the way it goes. Here are 5 potential candidates who may run for next Toronto's mayor. I think there's another piece in the Toronto Star that might even go into more potential candidates. So Gil Penalosa, he ran in the last election, which was not too long ago, and he came second place, distant second place in the October municipal election. He said he's going to run on the same platform as last time. Personally, I don't know. Not really a fan of Gil, but who knows? Michael Ford, who is Doug Ford's nephew, I believe. So this would basically be a worst case scenario. He recently won a seat as a MPP, so they're speculating that it might be possible that he would like resign from that position in order to be the mayor of Toronto Obviously, like the Ford family dynasty is something that needs to be stopped at all costs. In my personal opinion, like we should not be looking to concentrate power within the same family. It's just super foolish. It honestly feels like we're like dealing with feudal lords at this point. So, especially with strong mayor powers that have been pushed in by John Tory and Doug Ford, and thinking that Rob Ford was the former mayor, it's like we absolutely do not need this. So, Josh Matlow, who is currently a progressive city councilor for Toronto St. Paul's. I think from what I've read, which is admittedly not that much, I will have to do more of a deep dive as the election nears, and figure out who is the best person to vote for. But from what I've read so far, I think Josh Matlow would probably be the best choice. He's doing the whole, we need to not let John Tory being a POS distract us. We need to focus on what's really important, and that's making sure that every Torontonian has a warm place to go. The TTC is truly safe and reliable, and address the roots of our health and safety for our communities, repair crumbling infrastructure. So someone who, to me, is just like, okay, well, he seems to be like the most focused on the issues that are really important. So, right now, that's kind of like where my bias is. But, who I actually cannot say that I'm an expert on this at all. Brad Bradford. Okay, this is the most freaking Ontario name ever. Brad Bradford. Imagine that your last name was Bradford and you named your son Brad. So okay, this honestly seems like it would be a joke. So this is someone who is like closely aligned with John Tory himself. So immediately I'm kind of just like, no thanks. His name's been floated in progressive conservative circles. So yeah, it's like, sorry dog, I'm out. Chloe Brown, who finished a distant third place in the October elections against behind Tory and Penalosa. So I know that my sister, I think I probably shouldn't say this, voted for Chloe Brown. Apologies, sister, for outing your democratic right. But so I guess I don't know. I guess they might also be very progressive, and her 2022 platform included using technology-driven solutions to improve government services. So, I don't know. I'll have to see more. I guess right now, they haven't announced that they're running. A lot of these people haven't. But I'd be taking a closer look at Chloe Brown and Josh Matlow as things stand right now. All right, so the U.S. says it has only recently discovered that China has been using spy balloons. It's like, okay. One of the shocking quotes from this is, John Kirby, who is the spokesperson for the National Security Council, said this at a White House briefing on Monday. He said, one of the reasons we think we're seeing more is that we're looking for more. So the reason that we might be seeing this sudden uptick in unidentified flying objects in the sky might just be that they actually started looking for them. So that is, a ridiculous development in this story, I guess. They're still trying to recover a bunch of these objects that have been shot down by fighter jets, and my main concern when it comes to this story is that just like there is a lot of kind of misinformation and disinformation about these stories. I don't really trust anything that comes out. It's like, okay, China is bad, and then China is saying no, the U.S. is bad, and I'm like, you know what? I think both things can be true. And yeah, here River saying, what? They've been spying this whole time? It's like, yeah, exactly. That's what we say every day when we cover this story. It's like, yes, China is spying on Canada and the US, and Canada and the US are spying on China. This should not be news to anyone. We don't need to be surprised by this, but it is something that is dominating the headlines for some reason. So our last story of the day is that the RCMP is there's a lawsuit against them over the arrest of photojournalist Amber Bracken, who was covering the Wet'suwet'en pipeline standoff in British Columbia. Or sorry, it's not British Columbia. It's unceded Wet'suwet'en territory. So this is, something that was big news at the time. We'll probably watch the video later on stream, the original video taken by Amber Bracken, and that shows the arrest of land defenders. So the lawsuit is asking a judge to award general, aggravate, special, and punitive damages against the defendants for her arrest. The suit also wants a judge to rule that the RCMP had no justification for violating her and her employer's constitutional rights to freedom of the press under Section 2B of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So, this would be honestly like kind of a groundbreaking case. It might fundamentally change the way that police start interacting with reporters. So this would be excellent. When she was arrested, Mounties refused to verify her repeated claims that she was a journalist, although I feel like they knew what they were doing. I think this was kind of like a calculated risk on their part that they didn't want this story getting out. The officers told her a judge could decide whether she was a journalist or not, and drove her to a nearby detachment. It was Friday afternoon, leading to her spending the weekend in the cells of two RCMP detachments before being released by a judge in Prince George the following Monday afternoon, according to the lawsuit. So, she was okay. And then Coastal GasLink dropped the civil contempt lawsuit against her, so she was no longer bound by the terms of her injunction. And Emma Gilchrist, the co-founder of the Narwhal, said a judge could help protect journalists from future infringements on their freedoms as they try to document arrests at a controversial protest. So again, this would be something that has long-lasting implications. We will probably be doing a further deep dive into this story later on stream. So if you're watching this on YouTube and it's still before noon, you're welcome to join us. And if you made it this far in the video, please feel free to drop us a comment what you thought about any of these stories. Give us a like. Feel free to subscribe. We are trying to get 1,000 subscribers and we're very far away. So any little bit of help is appreciated. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back every weekday with the news, the headlines right here on My Homie Tutaro.